One day were Kocho out in walk in the forest outside town. She wanted to get some new fresh air, and since she was kind of a bit bored, she didn't have much to do. As she was just walking around in the forest, she came across something that she had never expected. It looks like this big hole on the ground. Not as though someone has been digging, but it's something had fallen down from the sky and impacted the ground. There was something like if a meteorite had hit impacted the ground, but there was nothing around the area except for some strange footprints, or at least some strange marks leading away from the hole. She decided to follow this prints or these strange marks just to see what it was could have made them. And after she walked for nearly 20 minutes, she found a small, or at least a big cave in the nearby. She had never been in this part of the forest before, but she decided to enter the fort in the cave anyways, just by curiosity. But as she walked in, she noticed something strange. She heard a strange mechanical sound inside the cave. But even with the echo, she could not pinpoint exactly what causing the sound. But she knows at least that it was mechanic. But then she just decided just to stand there, close her eyes, and focus with her ability to maybe figure out if she could connect with this mechanical machine, or at least electronic. Since she has ability to somehow connect with electronic devices, and she managed to connect with this strange mechanical thing in the cave. First, she had believed that maybe it was someone who throw in some a radio or something, but as she is connected, she heard a sound even stranger and saw some. But at then, someone said something that echoed quite a lot in the cave, but she was clearly heard every single word clearly. Who enters my mind? It was someone that has never been heard before. The voice was so deep and strong. She didn't dare to do anything else, but as she walked slowly out from the cave, she heard this strange sound on the ground as it shook a bit. If something was walking, but something heavy, like an elephant or something else. As she walked on there, she just had stepped out of the cave when she saw this huge figure approaching her from the cave. At first, she couldn't see what it was. She thought maybe it was perhaps someone who had made a trick on her. She thought that she saw something wrong. But as she walked out, she noticed this blue robot just stare at her, and she fell back to the ground to lose balance. She was just stunned and was more shocked to see this huge robot standing in front of her. And all that Kocho could ever do was just staring at this huge robot. She was frozen of fear because she saw that it was holding this appeared to be this large laser weapon or some kind. And he was actually not putting the weapon against her, but she was still scared that he would use it. But then he heard the same voice said, "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Much deeper this time. She was still terrified to even answer. And he then demanded to know why, or at least how, she was able to enter his mind. Even though she was terrified, she responded with a bit shaking voice that she had the ability to enter or at least access electronic devices by her own telepathic mind. And he said that's impossible for humans to do. But she explained she is not a regular human. In fact, she's an alien. And she proved it by doing it again. And this was actually the very proof, because for some reason she even somehow showed him that she was telling the truth. And then she asked him who is he was and where he's from. Since she known pointed out the ground, that at least the impact crater in the forest is just distant from there. He explained that he fell from the sky. After that, he fell from this space bridge, or at least this unstable one. And he explained that he is a Septicon from the planet Cybertron. She had never heard anything like it. She requested for him to tell her at least more details. At first, he refused, but she promised him that she would never use her ability against him. And since she had no one other way to defend herself against him, and since he is almost 3 times larger than herself, and that he has a laser weapon, so she had no a threat against him. And she even said that she can't control electronic devices, only somehow only gain access, but she has the ability to control them, only get access. So he has only her words, but that gave her some sort of trust, and he explained everything. He explained that he was one of the Decepticons, that he has been fighting against his enemy, the Autobots, for millions of years, mostly because of the resources of their home planet was getting low of energy, and now they were there on Earth. Then she explained she has never heard of any giant robots fighting on Earth, and he then explained the only logic answer that he can came up with, that this unstable space bridge had transported him from a different planet to a different universe. It is possible, he said, that this unstable space bridge technology can otherwise have two different effects. Either to being destroyed or just sending somewhere else, like just across the planet, or perhaps even out a different universe. Even that didn't seem so much very much good answer, but she had to believe him, and she did. Even at the first, that this was very something that unusual for her, though. Even at the most part, she had nothing else to do, and she explained to him, or at least asked him, why is he here, and where is he going now? Since there weren't any of his kind on Earth, and he can just not just walk around because people will recognize or at least notice him, and they could have been end up in some bad ways. The public would react badly or just freak out. The military would probably capture him and to perform some stunning on him, and he knew that. And he requested then of her if she knows at any place that he could stay, at least for temporarily. She knows about an old factory just outside of town that hasn't been used for several years. That was good enough for him, he said. And he even requested that she took him there. And don't ever try to do any tricks, because if there were any, he would take care of her with no question or doubt about it. And she promised not to do anything like that. After that, she had taken him to this factory. Before she left, he told her not to tell anyone about her, about him, and about that he is located here, as she promised. And several days later, Kocho could not stop thinking about this robot, and about the name Soundwave, which he called himself. She wanted to know more about him. There was something about this robot or Decepticon. She wanted to know more about. So she went back to the factory, even though she was expecting that it would be empty and that he had already left. But it turned out he was even still there, and he didn't even leave. And since he could just walk around any opening, even at night, and since there were no other Decepticons on Earth, he had no idea what to do then. And she then asked him, what about if he decided to stay on Earth as perhaps do something else? Maybe rather to being a bad guy, perhaps do something good for people around. But that was something that he never could do because it was against his programming. But she then asked him if it was possible if he could be using his technical skills to help people around the world or perhaps just in town. Before he could even answer, the both of them heard this huge loud sound from a distance. And even that they both have no idea what it's all about. And luckily, there was an old TV screen in this factory, of which he somehow made work again. And from that footage, they gained access to this news station. And apparently, this bridge in town had collapsed. And there was still people on board on the other side, and it was about to collapse. So, she then said, if he would be able to prove that he's a good guy, how about going into town to save the people? Even it means to exposing himself as the people about being a robot. At first, he had no idea if he would do it, because this was much against his programming. But after about only a few seconds of thinking, he decided to take her with him. So he grabbed her and he ran all the way to town, through the forest. And he dropped her on the ground and he jumped in the canal and managed to save the people on the bridge before it collapsed. And around that, the bystanders was really surprised seeing this huge robot standing there, and people demanded or at least asked him what his name was and what he was doing there and what he's from, and he only gave them some basic answers. But then he just left. People had no idea who or where he's from or why he was even there in the first place. Kocho, she decided to leave Soundwave alone for the rest of the day, but the next day she went back there. She found him still there, still listening to his radio. People were interviewed, especially those who had been trapped on the bridge just before it collapsed the second time. He then had been requested. They were interviewed, told about their feelings seeing this huge robot saving their lives. This said that he was very impressive, most of them all, but most of all, they were just happy that he was there and saving their lives before they could meet their end. Here is so much response, good response from the people that he saved. This was still very much against his programming, but with some courage from Kocho, he was able to do this again. But this time, they walked in together into town. And now, some of her friends were standing in town when they saw that she was sitting on his shoulder as he walked in. People were not terrified as they were before, since most of the people had recognized about him. But they were still just taking pictures, recording him, and as he was then putting down Kocho to the ground, her friends, especially her friend Matsu, was very surprised that she was with this huge robot. And the robot then requested to be interviewed by the local newspaper, the news radio, or the news TV station. And just only a moment later, a news van arrived and he was interviewed by the people. And after some time, the people had started accepting him as a hero, as a friend, even despite that he had no idea if he would ever be accepted. Even himself, his programming has not somehow altered. He had put a start to helping around in town to make sure that bridges, buildings, and other things are safe. And he, even on his spare time, had restored the old factory, the old former glory. and he stayed there as his own home. But around some times after all that happened, Kocho has started to spend more time with Soundwave. They had developed this new, first, very strange friendship. But at first they were really very cautious around each other. Even they had a very rocky friendship at the beginning. And they were still some very much on a few distrust at the beginning. But after some time they actually started to enjoy the company. And since Soundwave didn't have anyone else in the world to spend time with, and Koju, she actually started enjoying his company as well. But after about almost 2 years of being a friend, there was something that was going to happen between her and Soundwave. In fact, one day when Kushu was spending some time with Matsu and a few others of their friends, they were just comment about how she spent so much time with Soundwave, and that they somehow just believed that she were in love with Soundwave and that they were secretly dating. And even when Matsu mentioned this, the other left friends just laughed. But but Kushu, she wasn't even laughing herself. They looked at her, and for some reason, she said that in fact she were in love with Soundwave. And she even said that even if she were, she would never tell anyone, or at least Soundwave. But now, since her friends know about the truth, they asked her, or at least maybe told her to tell him. But she said she didn't want to risk her new friendship with Soundwave, especially now as he was somehow felt happy to have someone to be as a friend with. But her friends didn't demand it. They only somehow requested for her to at least give it a try to tell him about her true feelings. Even Matsume mentioned that maybe that he hasn't had the ability to express true feelings like anger, love, sadness, and the others maybe said there's a possibility that he maybe can't. But at least give it a try, said all of them. So Koshu decided to try to give it a try, and she went to Sanoe's home. And first they had this normal talk, like what happened in his life lately, what had he been up doing, some like small things, like small talk. But when she even asked him if he has the ability to sense any different feelings, like anger, kindness, sadness, sort of things, and he said that he has the ability to express feelings. But he had read at the beginning rather not to do so because to him it felt like feelings or at least emotions were a weakness. But now it isn't as true as they say. It turned out when she expressed these feelings to him about her feelings for him, he wasn't surprised though, because he told her that he had a feeling, or at least a sense, that she had some feelings for him. She even mentioned even that she understands if he would never date anyone like her. But he mentioned though, despite he was a robot, alien despite, and that she also is an alien, that didn't even stop there at since even she is a living being and he is a mechanical life form, but that didn't stop them from being dating. And she asked him if he wanted to date her. At first he said probably, but he said that he would give her a try and take her out on a date. So they went to this beach where they had a good time, just enjoyed, had some talk. They even enjoyed some local band who is playing on the beach and even watched the sunset together. A couple of days later, Kushu's friend asked her if she had even told him yet, and she said yes, and they had been on a date. They were all surprised and just looked at each other and said, "You dating him now?" and she just nodded and said yes. So after all of this happened, Kocho and Soundwave had been dating, and soon the public knew about this. Even the world, some of the people were first believed that this were not gonna work out, just because of their being two different life forms, and also he is a robot and he is much taller than her. But that didn't even stop them. But after all this happened, though, there were a few guys maybe wanted to date her, but she said no almost immediately because she already had a boyfriend already. And after being dating for about almost 2 years, they had decided maybe it was time to take a next step. Even if they probably would never get married, but they decided to have some sort of engagement or something. But Matsu had mentioned that might be a possibility for them to be married. She had even asked around those other temples or churches if there was possibility for for Kocho to be get married with Sunway. And two priests had said it was a possibility, and they decided to perform the ceremony together as one of the kind. So Kocho and Soundwave decided it was maybe the best for that. So they had a small wedding in a small temple outside of town. And even after all this, Soundwave was excited to have someone in his life. And after all this though, what happened later after they had been married? Well, they were married for about 4 years when something did happen. Kocho and Soundwave had decided maybe it was the best idea to maybe take the next step, maybe to have a family. So they decided to adopt some a kid, a kid from a local orphanage. They adopted a boy, age 5, and later a boy again, at age 10. They both were really excited to have two boys together. Even the both boys were a little bit surprised to having a robot as a parent. They were super excited, even a bit shy at first though, but they loved their robot father. And for most of their lives, Kocho could see how much happiness that Soundwave did have in his life. Even Soundwave did knew that it was impossible for him to go back to the other world. But he had started enjoying his new life in this new world with his wife and their two boys. And for that, he was just happy to be with the one he loved the most of all. And that's how Soundwave and Kocho found their true love and got a family together. The end.